Hey, what's up? Hello, everyone. Welcome into Fantasy Filmball, the show where we turn movies into sports and sports into something we don't talk about here. My name is Matt.
And my name is Dyl. It's a brand new year, and what better way to kick things off than reflecting on the roller coaster that was 2024 in film. From tear-jerking moments to laugh-out-loud hilarity, jaw-dropping action, and thought-provoking social commentary, this year really had it all. With 2024 now in the rearview mirror, it's time to celebrate the standout achievements of the year in cinema.
While we may call this a top 10 video, we both acknowledge that narrowing an entire year down to 10 movies is nearly impossible. We both watched a lot this year, and also being a channel run by two people with very different tastes in film, we couldn't just do a collective top 10 in any ordinary way. So this is not your average top 10 video. Instead of just picking movies, we both picked categories that defined this year in cinema.
So without further ado, and in no particular order, this is Fantasy Filmball's list for the 10 best films of 2024. Kicking off our list, let's take a look at the films that define 2024. A truly great cultural zeitgeist film captures the pulse of the moment, resonating with audiences by reflecting societal trends, emotions, or collective experiences. It taps into something deeply relevant, whether it's a political shift, a global movement, or a shared emotional need, and amplifies it in a way that feels both fresh and familiar. These films often surprise by offering a bold, timely commentary or a new perspective, while also connecting on a universal level. Consider The Substance with its innovative approach to social commentary on body and age dynamics, or Inside Out 2, which explores the complexities of going through puberty and finding your way once again. These films are more than just entertainment, they become part of the larger conversation, sparking social media buzz, fan engagement, and viral moments that extend their impact beyond the movie theater. A cultural zeitgeist film doesn't just entertain, it makes people think, feel, and talk, creating a shared cultural experience that lingers long after the credits roll. Ultimately, these films aren't just box office successes, they become deeply ingrained in the cultural landscape, influencing how we see the world and how we talk about it. And that's exactly why our number 10 film for 2024 is Wicked. Wicked is the perfect storm of timing, commentary, spectacle, and a fresh take on a beloved classic that has captured the cultural zeitgeist and exceeded expectations. After years of anticipation, the beloved Broadway musical, which has been a long staple in pop culture, has finally made its way down the yellow brick road to the big screen under the direction of John M. Chu, who is no stranger in bringing these vibrant, heartfelt stories to life. What makes this adaptation truly special is how Chu, alongside his creative team, elevates the Wicked story for a cinematic audience, expanding in ways a stage production could just really never do. The film's production design pops, the costumes and makeup and hairstyling subtly put you into the magical world of Oz, giving it a new texture while also staying true to the essence of the original. I find that Cynthia Erivo's performance as Elphaba is just electrifying, adding emotional depth to this character while her powerhouse vocals have the opportunity to soar, leaving the audiences just in pure awe. Then we have Ariana Grande's Glinda, who is this perfect blend of charm and wit and just has this commanding screen presence, elevating what many feared might be a one-note role into the film's most memorable performance. Wicked also excels by daring to expand on the Broadway numbers, with a decision to split the story into two films, giving each musical sequence the breathing room it deserves inside of these films. And I find that the result is a visual and auditory feast, where beloved songs like Popular and Defying Gravity are presented in ways that are both thrilling and original, with choreography and vocals that truly have the opportunity to shine. The extended One Short Day number I find immerses the viewer inside the Emerald City is just another standout moment, offering a long tracking shot that makes the audience feel present in the world. Even more surprising is the pacing, as Chu and his team managed to keep the energy up throughout, making Wicked feel fresh, even for those familiar with the original. Perhaps most importantly, the film taps into the cultural moment, riding the wave of nostalgia while offering something fresh and exciting for both fans of the original and newcomers alike. Much like Barbie or Top Gun Maverick in years past, it effortlessly blends visual and spectacle with emotional depth, offering audiences a story that's not just fun, but also so relevant and so resonant for many out there. And I find the film also masterfully commentates on the current political climate here stateside, with the parallels to the recent election and the grand old Wizard of Oz. And while I believe it's a cinematic triumph all on its own, Wicked also leaves you eagerly awaiting part 2, proving that once again, when a film hits all the right notes at the perfect moment, it just doesn't defy gravity. Dare I say, it's not just popular, it becomes a phenomenon and one of the best films of 2024.
As a kid, I used to wonder if one day we might run out of music, that all the possible combinations of notes would one day be used, and suddenly all songs would just be reiterations of melodies that had already been played. Watching as many movies as I do, it can often feel this way in regards to cinema. Original ideas are hard to come by, and even most of my favorite films of each year just feel like variations on old themes. We're in a postmodern era, where almost all of our art and all of our movies can be described as, what if X met Y? Originality now means combining things that you would never expect to be together. Some of our favorite examples from this year are Red Rooms, one of the darkest movies I've seen in recent memory, which takes the thrills of a serial killer movie and places it into the confines of a dark room with open access to the internet. Humanist vampire seeking consenting suicidal person, which combines the darkness of vampire horror with the quirky, upbeat feeling of a Sundance coming-of-age indie, almost like Harold and Maude meets A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. And the always unique Yorgos Lanthimos was back with an anthology film, Kinds of Kindness, which played his usual notes of strangeness in a fresh way that kept me thinking for days after viewing it. But all of these movies, no matter how much I enjoyed them, no matter how unique or original they may have felt, they still all had shades of other movies. The same notes played in a slightly different order, to continue the music metaphor here. But sometimes a movie comes along and begins playing notes that you didn't even know existed, creating an entirely new cinematic grammar, something that shakes the foundation of the medium, something like Ramel Ross's film Nickel Boys. When Colson Whitehead's novel The Nickel Boys released in 2019, producer Dee Gardner immediately knew that this had to be a film. However, when reading the story about a horrifically racially segregated boys' school in Florida and the deaths that happened there and were covered up, the part of the story that pulled Gardner in was the love at the core of it. Gardner knew that she didn't want to hand this to a filmmaker who would tell another story about pain and trauma. Instead, she wanted someone who would do something radical. A filmmaker with enough courage to stand against decades of movies about trauma, suffering, and violence inflicted upon black bodies. Enter Ramel Ross, a photographer, documentary filmmaker, and former college basketball star, who in early 2019 was nominated for an Oscar for his documentary, Hale County This Morning, This Evening, an experimental video essay that poetically captured a slice of life of the black residents in Hale County, Alabama. Despite never having made a narrative feature, Ross's style of photographing black life in the South spoke to Gardner, and he immediately signed on to direct Nickel Boys. A funny twist of fate, seeing as The Tree of Life, produced by Dee Gardner, was a major influence on Ross getting into filmmaking, as he wondered how Terrence Malick was given $30 million to make a complete art film with zero commercial appeal. Ross began to wonder if it would ever be possible for a black filmmaker to be given that same opportunity. Well, here was Ross's chance to make his own Tree of Life, a $25 million art film with practically zero commercial appeal. And the result couldn't have turned out better. Ramel Ross completely avoids all the old tropes and cliches in movies about racial injustice, inventing something completely new using 3 unique visual devices. First, the film is almost entirely shot in POV shots, looking through the eyes of the 2 main characters as they traverse the dangers of this school. While we've seen movies in the past shot in POV, like Hardcore Henry, and the visual style is familiar because of decades of first-person shooter video games, we've never seen POV footage handled in the way that it is in Nickel Boys. The intent is not to imitate video games, but to give the audience the ability to step into the shoes of these boys. Rather than being people to look at or gaze upon, they become a lens to look at the world through. While many films create a literal distance between the audience and the characters, here we literally could not be closer. The audience is given no choice but to empathize with them, to feel their pain, to experience their joy and their love. When we sit down to watch the film, we aren't watching them. We are them. We hear their breath in our ears as if it's our own. We see how they are looked at, how their blackness is gazed at by the world around them. There's some brilliant moments of POV where the wandering eyes of the characters allow us to see small moments of beauty, giving the film hope. A ray of sun through the leaves, a bird in the sky, the embrace of a grandmother and grandchild. Second, other sequences in the film are shot with a disembodied POV. Instead of seeing through the eyes of the character, now we're looking from behind them in third person, as though attached to the back of their head. We've definitely seen this type of shot before. In fact, Christopher Nolan famously loves back shots, but we've never seen it employed in quite this way. The disembodied POV from behind the character comes to be a representation of PTSD, living as a shell of oneself after experiencing something life-altering. Existing in a dissociative state has never been more accurately represented on screen. And finally, Ross intercuts a lot of classic footage and archival shots throughout the film. While sometimes it feels jarring in its use, it pretty quickly becomes part of the rhythm of the film. What Ross is interested in here is the juxtaposition of the representation of blackness in cinema, intercutting his film with footage taken in the 1960s, usually in which white filmmakers represented black characters through a lens of prejudice. So a scene in which Elwood meekly and anxiously sits in the back of a police car is intercut with the opening of The Defiant Ones, where Sidney Poitier causes a ruckus in the back of a cop car. Other pieces of archive footage demonstrate the gaze of 1960s white filmmakers and photographers towards black people, while Ross's film in itself is studying the impact of that gaze and the way that the camera can distort reality just as much as it presents it. Film creates a perception of the world, and then viewers can adopt or internalize that perspective. Images have the power to sway public perception, and in an era where everyone has a camera on them at all times, perception is swayed by those holding the camera. Perhaps this new freedom of images can lead to liberation in a way that these older images did not afford. I've genuinely never seen anything like Nickel Boys before, but I'm certain that we'll be seeing a lot more like it afterwards. It's a reinvention, a revelation, and the birth of a significant artist in Ramel Ross. This is by far the most original film of the year, which is why it makes our list.
Moving things along to our number 8 entry on the list. A great theatrical movie emphasizes performance, style, and dramatic tension, rather than a blockbuster spectacle. It's a movie that immerses the audience in a world where every word, gesture, and moment carries weight. These films thrive on powerful dialogue, much like A Real Pain's exploration of two cousins on a journey through their grandmother's homeland, or the sharp and emotionally charged performances in The Apprentice by Sebastian Stan and Jeremy Strong. A great theatrical film relies on nuanced acting to deliver moments of great depth akin to the heightened emotions we see in a stage production. Take Pedro Almodovar's English language debut, The Room Next Door, which carries the raw intensity that can only be felt in the theater. Theatrical films possess that sense of urgency and intimacy that speaks directly to the audience's emotions, creating an experience that feels alive and immediate. This year's Saturday Night captures the essence of theatrical pacing to a T. It's deliberate, rhythmic, and always building towards a new surprise. Much like The First Omen with its meticulous visual design, these costumes, the lighting, and the set pieces, these films use every element to heighten the story's tone and atmosphere. The framing of shots can take on a theatrical quality, drawing attention to small moments that deepen the emotional stakes, as expertly done in the Book of Clarence. And of course, I have to mention Sing Sing, which highlights the emotional power of theater through its raw, unfiltered performances. And Sing Sing is not just a movie, but I find to be a fully realized and carefully crafted performance that demands reflection. And while I would love to say that Sing Sing is our number 8 film on this year's top 10 list, I have to speak my truth. and say that Conclave gets my vote as the finest example of a theatrical movie in 2024. Conclave captures the true essence of theatricality, particularly in how it blends rich performances, intellectual depth, and an atmosphere thick with tension. It unfolds in complex narratives through sharp, incisive dialogue between the Cardinals, all carried by Ralph Fiennes' restrained performance, which exudes dignity and inner turmoil. Conclave's visual precision ensures that every shot feels purposeful, like the slow, deliberate pacing of a stage play. The film thrives in its confined setting, the Vatican, where the psychological battles between its characters unfold the immense pressure of electing a new pope. The film's ability to blend high-stakes political drama with deeply personal struggles is pretty remarkable, and it offers an exploration of power and human fragility that resonates beyond its setting. Conclave's ensemble is nothing short of extraordinary, and Fiennes' portrayal at its heart is a masterclass in theatrical performance. What could have been a stereotypical political figure is transformed by Ralph Fiennes into a complex character, racked by guilt and conviction with the weight of his own decisions burdening on his shoulders. His nuanced performance, punctuated by the subtle expressions and well-timed pauses, mirrors the pacing of a stage production once again, where the tension builds not through action, but through the power of words and the unsaid. Then we have Isabel Rossellini, who has one single scene but is the perfect example of theatrical economy we see all the time in stage shows, when a character just has a few carefully chosen words and delivers epic mic drop moments that echoes long after the scene has ended. It's not about dominating the screen, but rather about making every word count. Her graceful bow, in conjunction with the devastating insight, transforms her brief appearance into the most memorable and profound moment of the film. In Conclave, every element feels meticulously crafted, much like a well-rehearsed play. The dialogue is layered with symbolism, and the characters' actions and words reverberate throughout the plot, slowly unraveling the truth. The slow burn of the film draws the audience in, forcing them to pay close attention to the themes of leadership, sin, and redemption. Ultimately, Conclave exemplifies how a film can embrace the art of theater through its performances, structure, and thematic depth, while maintaining a cinematic quality. It challenges the audience to reflect on complex moral questions while delivering an intimate, intellectual, stimulating experience. Conclave is a piece of art that lingers, provoking thought and reflection long after the final ballot is cast. It's a perfect example of how a great theatrical film can transcend the limitations of cinema, offering an unforgettable and deeply immersive experience in our number 8 film of 2024.
One of my favorite feelings is getting out of a movie and thinking, I liked that, but I need to take some time to think about it before I know how I feel, followed by discussions with friends, as well as reading other people's reviews. Sometimes the answer is just that the film may not be as deep as it thinks it is. But sometimes this level of engagement with what a movie is doing can lead to immense rewards. I love digging into the subtext, and I love when a movie challenges me, stretching my perception and asking me to go the extra mile for it. Popular movies have always given far too little trust to the audience, so the only question that you ask when you leave the theater is, did I have fun? While there can be great movies that only exist as entertainment, two great examples from this year being The Fall Guy and Furiosa, which were wonderful cinematic junk food. Sometimes you need something with a bit more sustenance. So our next category is about subtext, movies where the filmmakers evidently place a lot of trust in the audience to take some leaps, to make connections that might not be completely evident or obvious on a first watch, which grow richer and richer with each and every viewing. Some of my favorite films from 2024 that lean on the subtext are All We Imagine Is Light, which took a dreamlike tone in exploring isolation through gender, sexuality, religion, and language. I swear, this movie could be analyzed through 100 different lenses, and you could keep discovering new ideas and themes buried within. Janet Planet, a seemingly simple film about a mother and daughter in the summer, filled with silences and unspoken truths, which becomes a film about the small incremental damages that come with having to play different roles for your parents. Not just child, but best friend and therapist as well. Andrea Arnold's Bird similarly looks at a child who has had to parentify themselves in the absence of strong grown-up role models, and becomes a strange fantasy story of a girl's coming of age in an environment where she's never been allowed to be a kid. And finally, I saw the TV Viglo, a brilliant horror movie about the terror of inaction as it relates to transness? What if you were meant to be someone else, but you were too afraid of being wrong to ever find out for certain? Jane Schoenbrunn gives a lot of trust to the audience in piecing it all together and making the leaps for themselves. Fitting to the subject matter, the signs are right in front of you. You just need to be willing to read them. But the film that I really want to talk about when I talk about subtext here is Brady Corbett's The Brutalist. The Brutalist tells the story of a man named Laszlo Toth, a Jewish-Hungarian architect who immigrates to Pennsylvania after surviving the horrors of the Holocaust. While searching for a living and trying to find his path towards the American dream, Toth ends up crossing paths with Harrison Van Buren, a wealthy industrialist who hires Toth to create a massive building for him. What follows is a true epic, the type of filmmaking that feels reminiscent of the films of yesteryear, like the rebirth of Francis Ford Coppola. Not only is The Brutalist one of the most cinematically stunning movies of the year, with outstanding cinematography, production design, music, and of course, a flawless ensemble of performers, all acting at their highest capabilities. It's also a miraculous achievement that the film even exists. The budget was somewhere around $8 million, and for a film of this scope, of this scale, that looks and sounds like this, to cost that little, it feels like a shot to the arm of this industry. But now to the topic of this section, the subtext of the film. The Brutalist is surely going to end up being one of the most interpreted and misinterpreted films of the year, something that was actually built by intention to be misinterpreted as a statement on the skewed perceptions of many Americans. A film about how the American dream's ideals of hard work being the path to success and pulling yourself up by your bootstraps is not too dissimilar to the words written above the gates of Auschwitz. Arbeit macht frei. Work makes one free. Knowing that this is a story about a Holocaust survivor, we are presented with the chaos of an opening scene in which claustrophobia and darkness surrounds us, in which we immediately believe we are watching the inside of a cattle car on the way to the camps. But instead, it's immediately revealed that this is actually the boat to America, as we see a reveal of the Statue of Liberty. Perhaps there's not much of a difference between the two. Throughout the film, we're presented with this pounding musical score, a soundtrack that thumps along with the cadence of a steam engine. Being a Holocaust film, we hear that train sound and we immediately link it to those same cattle cars I mentioned before. But being a film about the American dream, that can also be linked to westward expansion, to the railroads of America and the idea of manifest destiny, claiming the territory that is your so-called God-given right. It's yet another thing linking the American capitalists to the Nazis, whose campaign across Europe was in pursuit of claiming the land that they believed the German people should own. Those sounds of the train in the music work to link together these two ideas: capitalist oppression of the American working class and Nazi oppression of German Jewish people. It dares to ask the question, just how different are the Nazis and the capitalists? Adolf Hitler even kept a photo of Henry Ford in his office, citing him as a major inspiration in Nazi eugenic policies. The Brutalist criticizes the foundations of America and the foundations of capitalism as being deeply white supremacist. America being a place where capitalists rise to the top on the backs of the hardworking, the tired, the poor, the huddled masses, as is written on the Statue of Liberty. The immigrants who built the country under the promise that their hard work may secure good fortune. In reality, the only ones who work will truly set free are those who never do the work at all. Those who benefit from labor without getting their hands dirty. In reality, Laszlo did not escape the camps. He just came to America to trade for a new set of pajamas. While not everyone will get this out of the movie, I also read into The Brutalist as a critique of the current events taking place in Palestine, as Corbett does not hide his contempt for industrial imperialism, settler colonialism, and states built on an idea of bureaucratically and capitalistically mandated racial supremacy. While I've already seen many people out there critique The Brutalist as being Zionist, I would say that representation does not equal endorsement. There are certainly many ways to read The Brutalist, which is what makes it such a great film. I see it as a critique of states that are formed around the superiority of one type of people. A film that puts forward the idea that it is colonialism that leads to oppression, apartheid, and genocide. This is something that can be linked indirectly to any act of injustice throughout history, but can specifically be looked at in regards to the current atrocities being perpetuated in Gaza. As the characters in The Brutalist discuss leaving America behind and moving to a new Zionist state, there's an undercurrent there, something unspoken, that they don't just intend to flee their own oppression, but to replicate the same hierarchical system of oppression with them at the top instead. More than a great film, The Brutalist is a necessary film. Regardless of how you interpret the layers of subtext in this movie, this is the type of film that is being talked about when they say they don't make them like this anymore. Well, they did. Here it is.
Immersion in cinema isn't just about watching a film, it's about feeling inside of it. Pause. But the best immersive movies don't just tell you a story. It makes you feel like you've lived it, you've breathed it, and sometimes become a part of it. This year, we have films like A Complete Unknown, starring Timothée Chalamet, managing to absorb the viewer, taking them beyond the screen and into the world so richly crafted that reality starts to blur. From its captivating visuals to its evocative sound design, this is a film that doesn't just show you an iconic Bob Dylan concert, it makes you feel as though you're sitting front and center alongside the legend himself. Then we have movies like Flow. We witness not just strong characters, but emotional arcs that resonate on a profoundly personal level, crazy enough without the use of any real dialogue, inside a narrative that slowly pulls you in its depths and makes you feel as if you walk alongside these animals. And then The Wild Robot uses its stunning animation to create a world that doesn't just look real, it feels alive. Its forests, creatures, and landscapes almost tactile in their beauty, whether it's through innovative in-your-face storytelling like Pharrell Williams' Piece by Piece, or subtle, nostalgic details like In Focus features Dee Dee, a time capsule of the early 2000s. These films don't just entertain, they immerse, leaving you questioning if you've truly left their worlds at all. Which brings us to our number 6 film on this list, the long-awaited gothic masterpiece from Robert Eggers, Nosferatu. And Eggers, this man, he's been on an impressive run. And with Nosferatu, he's crafted what might just be his crowning achievement in terms of immersive filmmaking. This is a film where the world is the story, and you're not merely watching it, you're feeling it. Stepping into the film's gothic city is like walking through a nightmare from the past where shadows stretch long and the air is thick with dread. Eggers is a director known for his meticulous attention to detail. Whether it's in the puritanical 1930s The Witch, the dreary atmosphere of The Lighthouse, or the brutal landscapes of The Northman, each film has felt like a step forward, but often I always found myself observing from a distance, appreciating the technical mastery while struggling to feel a true emotional connection to the story. But here with Nosferatu, Eggers has finally found the perfect balance. His immersive world building here is a masterclass in atmosphere, blending the historical with the supernatural to create a place that feels lived in, haunted, and heartbreakingly real. The city itself is like a character. It's oppressive, unyielding, and unforgiving. Its cobbled streets soaked in both history and horror. It's a place where dread lingers in every shadow, and the cold, suffocating air wraps itself around you like a second skin. And then the performances are nothing short of revelatory. Lily Rose Depp, she transcends as Ellen Hutter, delivering a performance of staggering depth. I find that she brings this raw, almost otherworldly intensity to her role, fully inhabiting her character's torment. Her physicality during the moments of possession is so palpable that you almost feel the strain in your own bones, and watching her transform is like witnessing a slow motion descent into madness, and it's nothing short of mesmerizing. And then we have Bill Skarsgård's Count Orlok. He's known for his chilling performances in horror, but Skarsgård surpasses his own standards inside Nosferatu, bringing a seductive, almost hypnotic quality to the vampire. His portrayal of Orlok is more than terrifying. I find it simply magnetic. He pulls you into this world, blurring the lines between repulsion and fascination. Beneath the layers of makeup and shadow, you might just forget that it's Bill Skarsgård playing this creature. And that's just the beauty of the immersion in Nosferatu. You fully buy that this man has become this grotesque, alluring figure. The cinematography in Nosferatu is another revelation. Eggers uses long, lingering takes to weave the narrative, crafting an almost meditative pace that draws you deeper into the gothic nightmare. There's a rhythm to the shots, each one deliberate, each one unsettling. The use of shadows is especially haunting. Every figure, every movement feels like it's teetering on the edge of something both grotesque and simply beautiful. From the costumes to the sound design, every element of Nosferatu is meticulously crafted to envelop the viewer. The costumes are darkly elegant, the sound design pulses with a deep atmospheric hum, amplifying the film's sense of dread and seduction. One of the most striking elements is the sensuality of the vampires' feeding scenes. These moments are not just grotesque, they are drenched in an almost erotic tension that makes the act of violence feel both disturbing and oddly beautiful. It's a fascinating approach that Eggers plays with this disturbing duality in ways that will leave you questioning your own response. All in all, Nosferatu is an immersive experience, a gothic tale of obsession, possession, and terror. It plants you in a world so alive with dread and beauty that you won't want to leave, and you can't help but to succumb to the darkness.
Why is it that when budgets go up, creativity seems to go down? It almost seems like the more money is on the line, the more safe filmmakers are forced to play it. Throughout all of film's history, limitations have been in place that have forced filmmakers to look to creative solutions to get the shot, even to the very beginning. Think about Georges Méliès inventing jump cuts to make people disappear, or to shoot the moon in the face. As technology has advanced, there's now a solution for basically every problem, but many of those solutions require a lot of money to be spent. Indie filmmakers have always had to lean even more heavily on their creativity to bypass the restrictions that they're facing. Think about Sam Raimi strapping a camera to a piece of plywood and running through the forest because he couldn't afford a dolly for The Evil Dead. There's a real scrappy spirit that comes along with making indie movies. It's a group of artists pulling a giant magic trick together. So this next category is about spirit. Films that would stop at nothing to get made. No matter what limitations were thrown their way, these filmmakers adapted, came up with solutions, and the films are better and more creative for it. Some of my favorite films this year that define the spirit of filmmaking are Universal Language, which is an homage to both the city of Winnipeg and the films of Abbas Kiarostami, all done with a delicately handcrafted style that transforms the team's home city into an alternate universe where turkeys are worshipped and Canada's official language is Farsi. I Like Movies, a great Canadian indie that built an early 2000s video store from the ground up for a charming and painfully relatable story about the worst film bro you've ever met. Pictures of Ghosts, a Brazilian documentary film made largely during COVID, featuring a filmmaker looking back on how he's used his parents' apartment to make his movies for decades, as well as looking at how some of his city's most famous cinemas closed down. On a slightly different note, Look Back is all about the spirit that it takes to create independent art, telling the story of a young comic book artist fighting to make it in a competitive field. Even The Substance shows a huge amount of independent spirit, and came this close to getting its own spot on our top 10 list. But the film that I'm choosing to represent spirit on our list is Hundreds of Beavers. This should come as no surprise. I've been banging the drum for this film ever since TIFF 2023. At this point, I'm basically a Beaver superfan. I even have the poster hanging up in my bedroom. Mike Cheslick's film follows the story of a local Wisconsin drunkard named Gene Kayak, who, after an explosion flattens his cider brewery, is forced to survive the harsh environment of a Great Lakes winter, all while naked and afraid. Similar to a video game, Gene Kayak levels his way up, learning how to trap animals and becoming more and more powerful, with increasingly upgraded tools in his kit. When he meets the local shopkeeper's daughter, he falls in love, seeking to win her hand in marriage by presenting her father with hundreds of beaver furs. The catch? Every single one of these animals is played by someone wearing a mascot costume. Hundreds of Beavers is one part Buster Keaton silent film, one part Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote cartoon, and one part survival video game, caught between eras in a way that feels like it could only be thought up in a post-Adult Swim world. Now, usually when I think of comedies that have high laughs per minute counts, I think of screwball-esque comedies with fast-talking protagonists and lots of clever dialogue. Something like Airplane manages to have a high ratio of jokes per minute because all of the characters talk so fast, dropping joke after joke after joke. It's shocking to me that Hundreds of Beavers feels like it packs in just as many laughs per minute without ever saying a word. Every single joke is physical, contraptions backfiring, or sometimes working exactly as expected. What Hundreds of Beavers does that is so brilliant is the way that everything is either a setup or a payoff, and sometimes both at once. There's an economy of images where jokes instantly land because we've been seeing where the joke is headed for the entire movie. It would be impossible to list all of my favorite bits, but a great example is a sequence in which we see see sled dogs playing poker together, an obvious reference to the famous painting, and a funny little visual joke on its own. As the dogs are one by one picked off by wolves, the card games that they play change every time we see them, all the way till the last remaining dog is playing solitaire. Setups and payoffs, where the setup is a joke in itself. Like with any video game, there's a lot of backtracking. We go back to the same visual gags, the same locations, multiple times, each time having learned a bit more and powered up. So as the main character gets stronger and smarter, the gags get bigger and more elaborate. Not a single moment, not a single joke is phoned in. It's one of the most creative and inventive movies that I've ever seen, dripping with that aforementioned spirit of independent filmmaking. All the way down to the fact that these are just guys in animal costumes. This movie embraces its limitations rather than running away from them. What first starts off as a group of friends goofing around outdoors in sub-zero temperatures, tackling and hitting each other in the head with big sticks, quickly turns into a visual effects spectacle, but again, one that's jam-packed with limitations. The visual effects are not done by professionals. This is a group of guys with homemade green screens and a subscription to Adobe After Effects. There are simply things that are impossible to do with these restrictions, but that's what makes this movie so wonderful. What Hundreds of Beavers lacks in polish, it makes up for 100-fold in pure creativity. All of this is led by a brilliant physical performance from Ryland Brixton Cole Tews, who plays Gene Kayak like a mix of Harold Lloyd, Bear Grylls, and John Cena. A goofy, endearing, rugged hero, unafraid to sacrifice his body to make the audience chuckle. It's the type of self-effacing performance that few would be brave enough to do. This movie is absolutely wonderful. It's one of those indies that instantly makes me a lifelong fan of these guys and everything they do. Part of me hopes that they get a blank check to do whatever the hell they want, but part of me also doesn't want that creative spark to go away if they're given unlimited resources. This is also a major worry of mine for future projects by Daniels, but that's another subject altogether. Regardless, I know that Mike Cheslick and Ryland Tews are going to continue to make whatever the hell they want, regardless of how big the budget is. Hundreds of Beavers is proof that in filmmaking, your limits are truly only as big as your imagination is small. Every young aspiring filmmaker should be shown this movie as a reminder that you don't need millions of dollars to make something incredible.
A good thrill ride film is all about creating a pulse-pounding, edge-of-your-seat experience that keeps the viewers hooked from start to finish. It combines high-stakes action, fast pacing, and intense suspense to build a sense of urgency and excitement. Whether it's through the adrenaline-fueled musical sequences like those in Amelia Perez, or lustful extramarital affairs as shown in Baby Girl, or even unexpected twists similar to those in Late Night with the Devil's TV interviews, a great thrill ride keeps the tension building, never allowing the audience to really relax for too long. The key lies in the execution. Expertly choreographed sequences, tight editing, and a relentless sense of momentum all contribute to the feeling that you're strapped in for an exhilarating journey. While spectacle is really important, a good thrill ride film knows when it's time to slow down and build anticipation, striking a balance between high-octane action and moments of suspense. Characters in these films are often pushed to their limits, like Sky Riley in Smile 2, facing impossible or moral dilemmas, which adds emotional weight to the action. Ultimately, a great thrill ride film delivers an unforgettable experience, one that leaves you breathless, exhilarated, and craving for more. And that is exactly why Luca Guadagnino's Challengers is the ultimate thrill ride of 2024 and our number 4 film on the list. Blending high-stakes, complex characters in a masterful narrative, structured into an experience that keeps you hooked from the first serve to the eventual final set. Luca's tennis-driven drama isn't just about the sport, it's a psychological match of love, ambition, and competition, played out in real time on and off the court. The film's pulse-pounding energy comes from the tight, dynamic pacing, which mirrors the ebbs and flows of a tennis match itself. From the start, we see characters played by Zendaya, Mike Fice, and Josh O'Connor locked into a game of tension, each vying for something greater, whether it's the glory, love, or validation. What makes Challengers truly stand out is how Luca uses the sport as a metaphor for the characters' internal struggles. The film literally bounces between time, perspectives, and paces, much like the tense tennis match that we're watching unfold over the course of this film, forcing the audience to reevaluate each player's motivations and emotional stakes at each and every turn. This love triangle trio's chemistry is simply electrifying, Zendaya's portrayal of Tashi Duncan is layered and complex, a woman with big dreams and personal baggage, whose drive for success makes her a fascinating, if maybe a little bit misunderstood character. Mike Feist's art is the reluctant winner, someone who's had everything but has lost all his passion. And then Josh O'Connor's Patrick is just the perfect foil, who despite his bravado can't escape his own insecurities and destructive tendencies. Each character's journey unfolds through the tense, emotional, charged tennis match, with the stakes rising as the personal drama just intensifies with each and every new development. And we simply cannot discuss how incredible Challengers is without giving a massive shout out to the genius behind the lens, Sayambu Muktipram. His cinematography is nothing short of spectacular. It's creative, bold, and utterly captivating. The way his camera moves throughout the film is like a living, breathing entity. It's constantly in motion, never stagnant, with a rhythm that mirrors the film's high-energy pulse. And you know, that final scene, my god, it's pure cinema. It's like, how do they even pull that off? I have no idea, but it's undeniably the cinematic moment of the year. Every frame of that sequence is just a masterpiece. And I really love the film's structure. Each set reveals new layers of personal conflict, and it's nothing short of brilliant. By the time we reach the explosive final moments, when a revelation on the court shifts the dynamics for all three characters, the emotional payoff is immense. Reznor and Ross's electric score amplifies the tension, with the sharp editing which keeps you on the edge of your seat, making every rally feel like a life or death situation. Challengers thrives on its unpredictability, drawing you in with its high-octane narrative, only to leave you with a sense of a deeper reflection on ambition, love, and personal sacrifice. It's a film that gets better and better with each rewatch, with new nuances in the performance and storytelling to uncover. Ultimately, Challengers is the perfect thrill ride film, fast-paced, emotionally gripping, and brimming with tension that makes you feel victory and loss as if you're right there on the court.
How many movies have genuinely changed the world, influencing politics, or sparking the need for social change? A few examples that spring to mind are a short film about killing, which was such a brutal depiction of the death penalty that Poland actually cited it as a factor in abolishing the death penalty altogether. Meanwhile, I'm a Fugitive from a Chain Gang led to the end of chain gangs in Georgia state prisons. The documentary Blackfish nearly bankrupted SeaWorld by exposing harmful practices against the marine mammals kept in the park. So this next category rewards impact. That said, it is truly impossible to know exactly how a film will impact our world immediately in its year of release. But it's important to acknowledge the films that have the power to potentially lead the world towards becoming a better, safer place for all. We don't know whether these films will make lasting change, but they make statements that are truly worth listening to. Some of my favorite films this year that seek to make an impact are Union, which is an incredibly vital statement about the state of labor organizing in a gig economy world, showcasing the fight between workers and Amazon. A message that the establishment is so afraid to share that no distributor will even pick the film up for fear of Amazon retaliating. Sugarcane, which could be a major watershed moment in the discussion of Indigenous truth and reconciliation worldwide, as the film dives into Canadian residential schools and the mass graves hidden below them. The event that this film documents has already changed Canada permanently, and hopefully it could lead to similar discussions in other countries worldwide. And maybe it's cheating because this film certainly did not make any changes in the world, but The Apprentice tried its hardest to make a sway. While it might not have made a single difference whatsoever, the film and Sebastian Stan's uncanny portrayal of Donald Trump illuminated lots of qualities and tactics that I'm sure we're going to be seeing a lot of in the next 4 years. But the film that I most want to highlight as being particularly impactful is The Seed of the Sacred Fig. The Seed of the Sacred Fig must be prefaced with a few incredible stories that give context to the why of this film. First off, we need to talk about how the filmmaker Mohammad Rasulov has been persecuted by the government for his films. Starting in around 2010, Rasulov has been facing constant legal trouble for his movies, including prison time for filming without a permit, having his passport confiscated so that he could not attend international international festivals, and being banned from filmmaking altogether. He's been repeatedly placed on house arrest for the past 5 years, but has continued making films by any means necessary, continuing to speak up against the regime despite being punished every time. Skip forward to 2022 and the beginning of the women life freedom movement in Iran, when a young woman, Mahsa Amini, was killed by police for not wearing her hijab in accordance with local laws. Protesters took to the streets of Tehran, and young women refused to wear their hijabs. Upon seeing this while under house arrest, Mohammad Rasulov knew that he had to say something, and started developing his new film based around these protests. The Seed of the Sacred Fig began filming in secret in late 2023, shortly after Rasulov's house arrest ended. Still, with such a political film that was blatantly anti-government, Rasulov knew that getting permits to film was not an option. So filming took place for only a few days at a time over the course of many months, and no one on the crew was permitted to have their phones on them in case the government noticed a large group of people all in the same place at the same time. When filming came to a conclusion, Mohammad Rasulov was notified that the government planned to arrest him, and he had to make the decision to cross the border on foot, carrying very little except for the film's footage on hard drives, leaving his nation behind, possibly forever. In many ways, The Seed of the Sacred Fig feels like a tribute to the bravery of protesters who have much more on the line than Rasulov ever has. While Rasulov was able to get notice to leave the country, many women marching in the streets of Tehran received no such warning. While Rasulov would be sentenced to time in prison for his film, many of the protesters have been executed. This film is an immense work of bravery and protest, but by interweaving real footage of the protests, Rasulov is reminding us that this movement is much bigger than his film, and that the people fighting for their rights have far more to lose than the artists who speak about it. While it could be very easy to believe that this film is only great because of the context in which it was made, the greatness of The Seed of the Sacred Fig stretches far beyond the political importance or the relevance of this story. If you were to strip away the bravery of this act of political art, The Seed of the Sacred Fig remains one of the most compelling, heart-pounding thrillers of the year. A film in 3 acts that goes from a domestic drama about a patriarchal system within a family unit to becoming a story about small, subtle acts of rebellion, finally transforming into a film about revolution. With a flawless ensemble, nuanced writing, and editing that makes 3 hours fly by in an instant, The Seed of the Sacred Fig would be a great film even if it were not also a phenomenal act of bravery against a totalitarian regime. But of course, the two things are inseparable. This is a team of filmmakers coming together to stand up for something truly important. The opening title card describes the sacred fig as a parasitic seed that takes root in the branches of another tree. Growing on top of the old tree, the sacred fig's roots begin to strangle and sap the life of the tree below it until the original dies, something new being born on the corpse of the old. The Seed of the Sacred Fig is a parable of hope more than anything else, a testament to the strength and spirit of Persian women and of the Iranian people. Rasulov's film is a rallying cry for change, a tribute to those who challenge the status quo, and whose ideas could be the seed that take root upon the patriarchal regime, strangling it until only something new can survive. To watch The Seed of the Sacred Fig is to watch a film that feels like it could legitimately change the world. While the movie itself might not topple any regimes, it is an essential document of the women who will, a reminder that they are on the right side of history and that the whole world is standing with them.
2024 was the year of the sequel. Everything came back for a second round, and in some cases a third, a fourth, a fifth. Okay, let's not get too ahead of ourselves, but seriously, Part 2 was the theme of the year, with studios turning to their well-worn franchises to see if the magic and, the cash could flow once again. It was a cinematic buffet of long-awaited follow-ups, legacy sequels, and sequels we didn't really know that we needed, or in some cases we definitely didn't. Hollywood seemed to realize that instead of creating new IP, it was easier to dust off the old ones and slap another Part 2 in the title and call it a day. But hey, this is a top 10 list after all. Some of these returns were met with a collective finally, like the much anticipated Gladiator 2, which brought Ridley Scott back to his Best Picture winning classic and gave the sword and sandals picture a fresh pulse in the 2020s. And then there were films that made you stop and think, wait, that needed a sequel? Smile 2, A Quiet Place Day 1, proved that even when unexpected continuations come out, they can elevate on their predecessors in thrilling and new ways. In the world of Part 2 films, the real fun lies in the how and the why. The how of how do you top the first film without veering into total absurdity? Look at 2024 success stories like Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which expands the world after Caesar's sacrifice. The why? Well, because if it worked once, Why not do it again, but bigger and bolder? Think of Martin Lawrence and Will Smith once again delivering an epic action in the latest Bad Boys installment. And of course, the box office numbers. 2024 was a sequel fest, and the receipts insane. At the time of recording this, 9 of the 10 highest grossing films domestically were sequels. Audiences flocked to the theaters in droves, proving that there's something undeniably comforting about revisiting beloved characters and worlds. Whether if the sequels were brilliant, baffling, or where I am the only person in the entire world to adore the sequel. 2024's Part 2 films reminded us that in Hollywood, everything old is new again. And if it makes money, you can bet your sandworm popcorn bucket that Part 3 is already in the works. And that's why for our runner-up spot for the best films of 2024, it's only right that Dune Part 2 claims the throne. I mean, we all remember where we were in March, AMC Special Edition popcorn bucket in hand, walking into the theater with enormous expectations. And Denis Villeneuve delivered something even better than we all could have imagined. Watching this epic sequel, it's clear that Dune Part 2 isn't just a movie, it's an experience. The film engulfs your senses and transports you back to Arrakis, a world that feels both otherworldly and deeply human. It's not just breathtaking, it's transformative. It's hard to imagine any other sequel this year topping it. Dune Part 2 is the perfect example of what a sequel should strive to accomplish, finding the delicate balance between honoring the legacy of its predecessor and expanding the story in bold, meaningful ways. It deepens the narrative, building on the foundation laid in Part 1, but never simply retreading the same ground. The characters evolve with Paul Atreides facing the weight of his destiny head-on, with new players like Austin Butler's electrifying Fade Rotha bringing fresh energy to the film. The world of Arrakis expands too, introducing new landscapes, cultures, and political intrigue that feels like the natural extensions of the universe established inside the first film. What's particularly impressive is how Part 2 takes risk, whether it's in the pacing, its visual storytelling, or its exploration of complex themes. But these risks always serve the story, adding layers of depth rather than relying on spectacle alone. It's a sequel that stands on its own, delivering a thrilling and emotionally resonant journey from both newcomers and Dune fans alike, making you care deeply about the characters and their personal stakes. At the same time, it introduces new perspectives and new themes, exploring the cost of power, the burden of prophecy, and the complexity of revolution. And while Dune Part 2 delivers a satisfying, almost operatic conclusion to its arc, it also leaves the door wide open for what's to come, ensuring that audiences remain hungry for more. By seamlessly blending all these elements, Dune Part 2 feels not just like a worthy continuation of the story, but as an essential chapter that elevates the saga to brand new heights and cements itself as what a perfect Part 2 should strive to be, and an amazing example of what blockbuster cinema can do in the modern age. Long live the fighters.
Roger Ebert once said that cinema is a machine that generates empathy. By engaging with movies, we're pushed to engage with stories from outside of ourselves and outside of the limited perspective that each of us was born with. Every movie can help us to expand our worldview little by little, learning more about other people from other corners of the world, feeling their pain, celebrating their triumphs. The best films are often the ones that are able to make us feel for people we've never met and never will meet, almost as though they're old friends or part of our family. So this next and final category rewards empathy, the films that made us feel, that expanded our worlds just a little bit more with their authentic and genuine understanding of their characters. Some of the films this year that wowed me with their empathy were His Three Daughters, which was a beautifully performed tribute to sisterhood and the shared pain that comes from experiencing the end of a life. Between the Temples, which was a tactfully handled May-December romantic comedy about grief and looking for a guiding light at a crossroads in life. Memoir of a Snail, a delightful animated film about the shells we put up to protect ourselves from pain and the importance of removing those barriers to experience life to the fullest. Am I Okay, which was a criminally overlooked romantic comedy in which Dakota Johnson plays a woman who comes out as gay in her 30s, feeling as though life has already passed her by. We Live in Time, which uses a non-linear narrative structure to tell tell a story about dying that isn't about death as much as it is about the joy of living with someone you love. How to Have Sex, which tells the story about the importance of being informed about enthusiastic consent, and the horrors of finding yourself in a situation where everything feels wrong, and the inability to speak up for yourself due to socially ingrained shame. How to Make Millions Before Grandma Dies, which was the tearjerker of the year, all about intergenerational connections and the importance of treating family with kindness. But no film made an impression on me this year quite like Sean Baker's Anora. Sean Baker's filmmaking has always been defined by his empathy and his kindness towards his characters. From his earliest films, Baker has been interested in giving a closer look to people who society has marginalized. Working class people, sex workers, oftentimes characters whose behavior in public could be deemed crass or rude. Like when the character of Haley sticks a used pad on a window in the Florida Project, Baker's films focus on those who live on the margins, those who fight to get through every week. While many other films present sex work as something that has to be humanized, Baker is far more interested in showing that there's nothing more human in the first place than doing whatever needs to be done to make ends meet. That's as human as it gets. In Anora, we meet a third-generation Uzbek immigrant, Annie, who's grinded every single day of her life to get by. She works nights in a strip club, and when needed, she does extras on the side for her clients. When a young rich man, Vanya, comes to the club asking for a dancer who can speak Russian, Annie finds herself living her pretty woman Cinderella story. This rich man could be her ticket out of the working life. But these are two people who will never fully understand each other. They carry perspectives that are completely incompatible with one another. Both Annie and Vanya have no basis for understanding how the other moves through the world. While Annie works from paycheck to paycheck, Vanya has never even had to check his bank account before splurging on a luxury purchase. The two of them could never understand life through the eyes of the other. There's a scene very early in the film that I feel encapsulates the entire movie. Annie sits in Vanya's bed, and she asks him what he's done to make this much money. She clearly wants to know if he's gotten himself into something illegal like drugs or arms dealing, but the subtext here is that Annie truly can't even comprehend someone having all this without having worked for it. It's not even the slightest thought for her that all of this could have been given to him by a parent. Likewise, Vanya can't comprehend the level of hustling and the amount of work that Annie has needed to do just to survive, and he can't begin to comprehend the damage that he's about to do to her just to have a little bit of fun. In Anora, every relationship is a monetary transaction. It's not just Vanya paying for the companionship of Annie. His family's paying for the companionship of every friend and staff member that they have. We watch as everyone desperately tries to cling on to their livelihood, knowing that they depend on Vanya's family for money. They're all forced to do absurd things, putting up with horrible behavior from a spoiled brat, all because they depend on the paycheck. Essentially, whether they're a sex worker or just someone paid to watch over the house, one way or another, they're all getting fucked for money. That's why the beating heart of this film is the Igor character, played by Yuri Borisov, who seems to be the only person here with a shred of empathy, someone who can see that Annie is just the other side of the same coin, another worker who this family looks down upon as expendable. Through the film, he almost acts as an audience stand-in, powerless to do anything to change the trajectory of the plot, but always looking on with kindness and understanding. It's one of the many tragedies of Anora that in the end, Annie sees Igor's kindness as yet another transaction, when it's perhaps the only thing in this movie that comes without any strings. Sean Baker tells this story as a true American tragedy, not a story that looks down on Annie or paints her as a fool swindled by an irresponsible man-child, but rather the type of dreamer that America is built on the back of. Someone who strives with every inch of her being towards something greater, who attempts to pull herself up by her proverbial bootstraps until she wakes up from the fairy tale and realizes that the people up there would never allow someone from down there to join their ranks. Baker's movie is a film that truly makes us feel like we're viewing the world through Annie's eyes, a masterpiece, and for our money, the best movie of the year.
And that's a wrap on our top 10 films of 2024. We definitely took a few, creative risks with this list, so let us know what you think down in the comments.
What movies made your top 10 that didn't quite make ours? We'd love to hear what we missed.
If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to drop a like to help the channel grow.
And consider subscribing if you're into awards season and all things film. We're both so excited for another epic year of movies up ahead in 2025. And as always, this has been Fantasy Filmball. My name's Matt.
And my name's Dyl.